Hello, and thank you all so much for joining us today. We are super excited. We have another fantastic speaker, Zach Wilcox with Wilcox Consulting. And today, Zach will be teaching us about creating effective teams. Now, before we get too much farther, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Merchant Masters, Job Performance with their proprietary Job Fit Report, Turtle Creek Financial Group, Exiva, and McGraw Capital Partners. Without them, our mission and vision would not be able to come to fruition. So thank you to each and every one of these entities for making this possible. And now we do want to give Zach a proper introduction because, Zach, you are a total boss. Zach brings extensive experience from the nonprofit sector to his consulting practice, as well as over a decade of leadership experience. He works with leaders and leadership teams to help create more cohesive teams by increasing trust, effective conflict, commitment, and clarity. Zach is a member of the Table Group's membership group, Kappa Pro, and consults with teams around Patrick Lencioni's models, if I'm saying that correctly, and found in his books, including The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, The Advantage, and Death. And without any further ado, Zach, thank you so much for joining us today. What do you have for us?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. If you want to pull up the slides, I'm going to get right into it. I know that for many of us, we struggle with how to know which decisions are the right decisions to make. We've all had moments where we weren't sure if we were doing the right thing. We weren't sure if what we're going to do a mistake. And so I want to help you guys have clarity around what is the right decision. How do we know if it's the right decision? Because too often I have not had that clarity, and I know so many of you as well have been there. So all of this is going to be really simple stuff, but I'm a big believer in simplicity. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, right? It's difficult stuff, but simple at the same time. So this is kind of my first slide to really I want to emphasize the idea we're going. If you don't have clarity in your business, you're going to be confused. Confusion will lead to poor decision making, and confusion also leads to disengaged employees, which is bad for us. If you listen to the podcast I was on, you know that it costs billions of dollars a year. Employee disengagement costs billions of dollars a year, and will also make your employees go home miserable, which we don't want. Before we go any farther, though, I want to say thank you again to the Table Group. This is one of their models. You can go ahead and buy their book, The Advantage. It's a great book if you want to have a healthy organization. So it's not this isn't my model that I'm using, it's theirs, and most of the content comes from them. So I want to acknowledge that before we start as well. And then as well, before we get started, I really want to set the context for what it means to be a healthy organization. I might say that, and some people might, I don't know what that means. A healthy organization is different than a smart organization. There is everyone in the world, all of you people watching, I know are smart. Because it's about knowledge of your business. Smart is about the knowledge of your business. I've never met anyone, and I've never even really heard of anyone who didn't have knowledge of the sector they were in. If you don't have that, that's why you're even in business, right? If you have the knowledge, which right now is so ubiquitous, that just gets your foot in the door of playing. So my question is, if everyone has this knowledge, why do some organizations thrive while others just survive? I believe very strongly that it's because some organizations are healthy and some are not. If you look at an organization like Southwest Airlines, which I'm going to talk about a few other times because I love them, I love their story, I love the organization. They've had, before COVID hit last year, they had 47 years of consecutive growth. They didn't have 1 year without positive growth, which is absolutely amazing. That includes 9/11, right? That includes 2001. After 9/11, they still had a year of positive growth. How did that happen? Is it because they know more than their competitors? No. Obviously, that answer is no. Everyone knows how to, like all of the top airlines and even the lesser airlines know how to run an airline. But the difference is, are they healthy? So the smart things we're going to look at is, do you have knowledge of finance? Do you know the technology, the marketing? Do you know how to manufacture it? Maybe if you're a vet, do you know about the animals? I know, shout out to Preston. He's a podcast guy. Do you know about podcasts? Can you help people get their podcast going strong? The healthy side is, do you have politics in your organization? Is there confusion? Do you have high turnover? Do you have productivity? Do you have morale? Those things are what make a healthy organization thrive. And we get there with these 4 disciplines of organizational health. If I do want to emphasize that they're disciplines, right? These aren't easy things to do. Discipline is something that takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, it takes time. So it's not an easy thing to do. 4 disciplines. If you have any questions while we're going, please put your questions in the chat. I really want to answer it. I love interactive workshops. I wish we could be in person. Obviously, we can't for a lot of different reasons, but please make sure to put your questions there in the chat. I'll try to get to them if I see them. And if I don't, we'll have more questions at the end, which I think John already said too. So the first discipline is building a cohesive leadership team. This is a behaviorally cohesive, to be aligned behaviorally around what is important to us. Are we having effective conflict? Are we holding each other accountable? Are we committing well? Which ultimately, all of that, we build those effective teams to get results. Because if you're not getting results, what are you doing? The second one is creating clarity, and this is the one that we're going to spend our time on today. Is how do we get clarity in an organization about where we're going and what we're doing and what's most important? And there's 6 key questions that we need to answer when we do this. We're going to go over these 6 questions, so I'm going to skip over them later or until later because we're not going to answer them right now. The third one is how are we over communicating our clarity? Samuel Johnson, who I think was in the 1800s, he was a writer in the 1800s, said we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed. And that's true of everyone everywhere. People need to be reminded. Your employees need to be reminded. I'm sure we've all heard stories of someone who says, you've been in an organization and say, hey, this is our core value. And they tell you once and you never hear about it again. No one's going to believe that if you say it once and then never talk about it ever again. You have to remind people consistently with your words, with your actions, with how you're hiring people. It all has to reinforce that, which leads me to the last one, which is reinforcing clarity in how we run our meetings and how we hire and how we promote. If we say this is important to us, whatever this is, and then we reward people when they don't do that, or we don't reward people when they do that, then we're not going to have any credibility. We're going to lose all our credibility with our employees. So really, we need to focus everything around these 6 questions. But the first and second disciplines really have to happen together. I know I'm focusing really on this second discipline, creating clarity, but if you don't have a behaviorally aligned and cohesive leadership team, it's going to be very, very difficult to get the answers to these 6 questions that you need to get, because you need to be able to have conflict and say, no, I disagree with you. I don't think that's right. Or no, I think it's actually this instead. You need to be able to hold each other accountable and commit. I already talked about these, but really they have to go hand in hand. So very, very important that you have that first discipline down as well. So again, I'm here hopefully to help you be able to know how to make better decisions, because that's what we all want. These 6 questions should not be marketing material. This should be internal stuff. I hear so many organizations who get their core values and put it out there and say, this is what we are, and they do nothing with it internally. That's bad. It shouldn't be written for a t-shirt or a poster. These 6 questions really are what you believe internally. If you think that you're already aligned around these 6 questions, that's awesome. All I'm going to say is do one thing. First of all, I hope that's true. Do one thing. Next time you have a leadership meeting, have everyone write down what they think the answers are to those 6 questions. Don't share them until the end, but when everyone's written down the answers, then have everyone share after that. I think, and this has been the case with all the clients I've worked with, there will be a lot more gaps in the clarity than you think you have. You might think you're aligned, but I think you'll be surprised. Unfortunately, I hope not, but I think, and that's because it's my been experience, that most people are less aligned than they think they are. So that's one exercise that I would really encourage you to do. So the first question when it comes to creating clarity is, why do we exist? This question has been talked about all up and down, right? Simon Sinek has a book about it. There's Good to Great, right? There's been so many books that have been written about why we exist, but it's still important because each of these 6 questions are a filter that you should be running your decisions through. And the first question is, why do we exist? Now, this is a very um, uh, high level, up in the clouds kind of uh, a question. It's not tactical. It's not down on the ground. Really, when I instruct my clients, I say this should be the answer to this question should be as close to make the world a better place as you can get without actually saying to make the world a better place. And it can cross industries, right? You can have the same why in two completely different industries because the why has nothing to do with what you do. There's an organization that they run paving. They run a paving company, and their why, the reason they exist, is to provide jobs for low income or people without a formal education, so that they can provide for their families. They could do anything with that. They just happen to do paving, but the reason they exist is to provide these jobs for people who may not be able to get a job elsewhere. Me personally, my job is because I don't want people to go home miserable at the end of the day. There's a lot of different things I can do with that, but I just chose, partly because I'm passionate about it, to do consulting. So your why doesn't have to, and in some ways shouldn't really relate to your field. But if you're trying to understand your why and you're not sure about it, keep asking yourself the question, okay, why? Why is that the reason? And if you can't answer with anything else, or if you think you're just about at to make the world a better place, then you're probably settled at it. And then you have to get your whole company aligned around that. Because if you hire someone who does, if I hired someone who didn't care if people went home miserable, well, they're not going to be a very good fit because we're going to be constantly clashing. The second question is, how do we behave? And this is, I want to emphasize as well, behave. We're going to get into this a little bit more. And we're going to be talking about values here. This question is about values, but behavioral values, not strategic values. And that's a very key difference. Behavioral values is, how do we treat each other? How do we act at work? What's important when we're talking or saying hi, or like, what are those things that are endemic to who we are? Now, there's four kinds of values. Um, there's accidental values, which is the first one we're going to talk about. Accidental values is a value where, maybe you go to work one day and you walk in the door and you realize, hey, all of the people here are 55 years old. We all retired from our old job. We were all CEOs. We retired, and now we're a bit jaded at the world, and that's how we view life. That would be an accidental value. Accidental values often, not always, but often, are things you don't really mean to put in your organization, and they're not always good, and they're often not good, but they just happen over time without you realizing it. Uh, you know, Another one might be if you wake up all of a sudden and your company has grown to 60 people and it's every single person in there is a white male in their 30s, right? You've got absolutely no diversity. No one wants that. And that just happens accidentally. That's an accidental value that we want to address pretty drastically. The second one is going to be permission to play values. These values are honesty, integrity. They're the table stakes. People might say, oh, honesty is a core value. Well, not really. Honesty, integrity, hardworking, those are just what you have to get in the door. No one says we want to hire lazy, cheating, uncommitted people. People just don't say that. That just doesn't happen. People want honest, hardworking people with integrity in their companies. That's a permission to play value. That's just table stakes. It's low grade kind of a thing. Every now and again, you might get one company that says, no, that's a core value for us. If that's the case, I would advise you to tread very carefully, because if that's the case, you'd really have to be kind of at the top. Like, you would have to have more honesty, more integrity than anyone else, than any other company in your sector, or maybe even in the in the region, which is really a difficult thing to do. Then we've got aspirational values. A lot of times I see organizations and companies say, oh, we have to have this value because we're not that, and we need that as a core value because we have to have that. Well, that's not a core value. That's an aspirational value. An aspirational value might be something that you wish you were. Oh, excuse me. I apologize for my alarm going off. an aspirational value is something that you wish you had, but you don't right now. Again, to say that an aspirational value is a core value is kind of lying to yourself. And again, you're going to lose credibility with your employees pretty quickly. Um, the last one, which you've probably guessed by now, is core values. These are 2 to 3 things, uh, really no more than 3. If you have to have more than 3, we'll say the absolute limit is 4, but really it shouldn't be more than 3 things that are endemic to who you are as an organization. You're going to be willing to suffer for these things. Um, you're going to probably often take it too far. Like, this is something that you're going to be so excited about doing that you're not going to really care who knows about it. So another story, right? From Southwest. Again, lots of Southwest stories. They had a customer. This lady wrote in and complained because that she had heard a joke. If you've ever flown Southwest, and I hope you have, they had one of the flight attendants told a joke that she didn't really appreciate. So she wrote into the CEO and she said, "Hey, this happened. I don't like it. I don't think it's okay to joke about safety, something like that." And the CEO, in most companies, would have written back and said, "I'm so sorry that happened. We really value you for being a frequent flyer," because she was a frequent flyer. She'd been using Southwest for a long time. Uh, and he said, most companies would have written back, said, "We'll look into it." They would have called, tried to figure out what it was, said, "Hey, you need to tone this humor down." But for Southwest, one of their core values is a fun-loving spirit. They try to be funny. They try to joke, especially about themselves. And so the CEO of Southwest wrote 3 words back to this lady: "We'll miss you." And that's the kind of thing that your core values really get you, is this idea that we're willing to suffer for this thing because we know who we are, we know who we want to be. They're not inclusive. Core values are exclusive. And really, all of these 6 questions, as much as helping you know who to include in your organization, whether it's customers or employees, partners, teammates, whatever you want to call them, is who to exclude. Right? That's just as important. And I'm not to say you should go around firing customers, because you shouldn't, unless they say, "We don't like this about you." Right? If your core value is fun-loving spirit in the case of Southwest Airlines, and someone says, "We don't like that," you need to change it. They're going to say, "I'm sorry, this is who we are. You're going to have to fly different airlines," and you have to be okay with that, because that's going to help you much more often than it's going to harm you. There's not hundreds of stories about people writing to Southwest saying you got to change. There's that one story. You know what I mean? So the loyalty that they've built from their core values and from being who they are has far outweighed the costs of any potential negatives that there might be there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions so far, so we're going to keep going. The third question is going to be, what do we do? By the way, I'm deliberately trying to move fast. I know you guys are busy, and I want to value your time and try to get as much value in here as I can for you in a short amount of time. Actually, I'm going to back up really quick to this last one, core values. If you want to figure out what your core values are as a team, the exercise I usually run through with my team, with my clients, when I'm doing it with my clients, is ask yourself 3 questions. The first question is, who are our favorite people? The people that we could clone, whether they're here anymore, like whether they're employees of the past or they're here currently. Who are those people that you just love to clone? Each member of your leadership team, pick 3 people, and only one of them can be from your department. So 2 other people have to be from a different department. And then once you've gone through that, then everyone will go through, say the names, and then pick 4 or 5, maybe 6 names that everyone's like, "Yes, that person, absolutely that person." If someone's disagreeing on them, we'll leave them off to the side, or if they only get mentioned by one person, let me off to the side. Okay, so now we've got these 4, 5, maybe 6 people. What are the characteristics of these people that just make you so excited? You write down those characteristics. Again, you have everyone write them down. Don't just spout them out, because you don't want people to be influenced. Have everyone write them down, then you go around and read them off, and then do the same thing for the worst people. The people that just don't fit. That doesn't mean they're bad employees. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they don't fit here in this organization. And that should be the case. If you haven't had people who just don't fit, either you're exceptional at hiring, which kudos to you. I'm very excited for you, or you don't really have that sense of, this is who we are. which is a bigger problem. And that's usually, I really I've never found any organization really where they've had no one that didn't fit. I don't think that ever has been the case as far as I can remember. Um, and this can take some maturity. You don't have to say names in this part. You can just go straight to writing down the characteristics, because we're not trying to slander people or badmouth them. So you can just go straight to writing down the characteristics. Okay, so these are the characteristics we didn't like about these people. What are the opposites of those? Often you'll find that the best characteristics and the worst match up. Okay, so what's the overlap there? And the third question you're going to ask is, okay, are we, and by we I mean the leadership team, which of these characteristics do we have? Because if the leadership doesn't embody those characteristics, again, you're going to have no credibility. The leadership team really has to embody the characteristics of the core values. So that's the exercise that I usually run my clients through.
Zach, can I jump in with
Yeah,
a quick question here?
yeah, absolutely.
Can you give us an example of what that process would look like if you're a small business owner with, say, 4 employees and 1099s? What would
Yeah,
that look like? So obviously that's going to be a little different, but what would that type of structure look like?
yeah. So if and I know we've got a lot of founders in here. I'm one myself. The process does look a little different. Um, it's more about who am I and what do I value? What are the things? And this does take a lot of self-awareness. So if you can do this with someone who is either outside of like if you're married, if you have a wife or a best friend, someone can help you understand, okay, what is it that I value that I couldn't stop being even if I tried? I just couldn't stop being this. Um, those are some things that you would want to take and look for in other people, or and for the flip side, say, okay, who are the people, the friends that I've had, the employees I've worked with that I just didn't get along? Why didn't I get along with them? This is when I say employee, like people you've worked with before you've started your business. So it's a similar process, but is shaped a little bit differently if you don't have that executive team. And it can be difficult to have that talk with your employees, because then they're saying, okay, who's the best person here? That's not always a great, or out of you 4, I would clone you and not the other 3. Like that's not a great conversation to have. So if you don't have a leadership team, that's more what it would look like, as far as, hey, let's talk to these other people outside who still know me really well, know what I care about, know what I'm passionate about, because you are the founder. So you are setting these things without the history. A lot of the clients that I work with have had years and years of business. They already have that history built in of employees, of what they care about. So it is a different process. Did I make that clear, John?
No, you absolutely did. Thank you. Because I think that's a
Great.
lot of the dilemma that a traditional small business owner runs into.
Yeah.
It's like, I get it how it works if you got, different departments, 20, 30, 40, or maybe even 50 employees. But what if I only got 4?
Yeah.
So no, that definitely answers the question. Thank you.
Good. Glad to hear it. Okay, so the fourth question, and this is probably my most favorite question. The fourth question here is, how will we succeed? And how we succeed is the question of, what is your strategy? This question is the strategic question. So it's really important to understand your strategy, and I think strategy is often difficult to describe. But for me, your strategy will take the form of 3 anchors through which you will run all your decisions. It should also be visible to those outside the organization. The decisions that you make, that your customers, whoever the marketplace can see, lets them know what your strategy is. And we're going to look at an example of that in just a second. But I want to emphasize that again. The decisions you make will tell the marketplace what your strategy is. And if you don't have a strategy, that will be very evident as well, which we'll also look at another example. So I'm going to ask a question. Okay, what is true about Southwest Airlines? If you know Southwest, again, we're talking about Southwest. I love them. If you have any ideas, let's go ahead and put them in the chat. I really want to see your ideas on this. What is true about Southwest Airlines? It's well, there's a few things that I'm looking for. Okay, there's I'm just going to go and put the list up. I don't see any comments yet, which is fine. So there's these things that we're going to look at. Okay, so this is true about Southwest Airlines, and most people who look at Southwest know this and can see this and can say, yes, absolutely. They've got low prices. they're on time, they've got one kind of airplane, they buy gas on the futures market, they're funny, right? Humor. So all of these things are true about Southwest. And really, the only one that you kind of have to have background knowledge of is that they buy gas on the futures market. Pretty much everything else you can tell just by looking at them. By flying on Southwest, you know that they don't have any baggage fees. The fact they have great service, they're employee focused. They don't use travel agents to buy a ticket from Southwest. You have to go straight to southwest.com. You can't buy it through Google or whatever the Expedia, whatever the other travel sites are. You have to go straight to Southwest. So these are the things that are true about Southwest Airlines. So then we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, what are then, because remember, we want our strategy to have the form of 3 anchors through which we can run our decisions to know if it's a good decision. So what are Southwest's 3 anchors? So when I do this with a client, when I'm working this through with a client, we'll say, and I want you to do this for your company too, say, okay, what's true about us? You know, and write everything you can. Get a big whiteboard, write everything possible you can up on a whiteboard. Which, by the way, I have, if you didn't get it, there was a playbook sent out. I think John sent that out in an email. Be writing these answers down, because I want you to be able to answer these questions by the end of the workshop. Or, if you want to do it afterwards, that's fine. But I want you to be able to write it down. I keep this printed out and I look at it every day. I check that out because that helps me keep centered on where I'm supposed to be going and what I'm supposed to be doing. So have that playbook handy so you can look at it all the time. We don't answer these questions so that they can go sit in a filing cabinet somewhere and we never look at them, right? This is real, tangible, helps us with our everyday running the business life. So when you're doing this, going back to running this yourself, write everything, right? It's going to be apples, oranges, Cadillacs, and monkeys. Everything, doesn't matter what it is, right? You could also add here that they're based out of Texas. They only fly domestically. I'm sure there are other things that you could write on here. And when you've done that, you want to find groupings of words that will fit together to make an anchor. So as we're looking here, what are Southwest's 3 strategic anchors? The first things I'm seeing is, okay, well, I see low prices. That could be one. They buy gas on the futures market. That keeps their prices low. They've got no baggage fees. That keeps their prices low. No assigned seats. That keeps their prices low. No frills. That keeps their prices low. No travel agents. So I'm thinking low prices could probably be one. Then I'm looking again. Okay, so they're on time. They're always on time. That's right. They use one kind of airplane. That helps them with that. No assigned seats. That helps them. No baggage fees actually also helps them with being on time. And then a third one I'm seeing, okay, well, they're employee focused. They've got great service. They're funny. That could be a customer service. So as we look through here, we actually find that, and I know, so one of my colleagues actually works inside Southwest. That's how I know this is one of my colleagues has shared these stories. So that's how I have some of this insider knowledge with Southwest, so to speak. I know that their anchors are on time, low fares, and customer service. But I don't have to be inside Southwest to know this, because I can tell we wrote out this list without being inside. I've never worked for Southwest, but I knew these things because I can say, hey, what decisions is Southwest making? We'll look at low fares, right? When 9/11 happened, every other airline in the industry said, we're going to charge for bag fees. We're going to charge for bags. And Southwest said no. And they said no, knowing that it would cost them millions of dollars a month. I'm not kidding there, millions of dollars a month. Because A, it would violate their first strategic anchor on time. Because if people aren't able to check bag, and we see this all the time, right? I'm sure you see, if you fly any other airline, when you get up the gangway, you're about to get on the plane, oh, that bag's too big, we have to put it underneath, so you have to check your bag. That takes time. Even though it's costing them millions over. The second one is it would increase their prices. And they don't want to do that. They want to have low fares. That's one of the strategic anchors. So for them, and also it affects customer service too, because no one wants to pay for bag fees. So for them, it wasn't an easy decision, because saying no to millions of dollars a month is not an easy decision. But they knew they had to say no, because they looked at their strategic anchors and they said, this is how we make our decision. This is our strategy. So it's obvious. It's not easy, but it's obvious. Another one would be, hey, what about getting TVs in the backs of our seats? Everyone was doing that. Southwest said, well, that's going to make tickets more expensive. It might delay us if we have to make repairs. Is it going to be good for customer service? Yes. But you know what we can do instead? Wi-Fi. And that's what they do. Southwest was actually one of the leaders to have Wi-Fi on their planes to get, to get entertainment for their passengers another way. So this stuff is really, really applicable to how, this is why it's my favorite question, because it can help you go from, okay, how do I know which decision is the right decision to make? I had a client ask me the other day, he said, hey, we're trying to know if we should expand, and there's this really nice piece of property that we love. How do I know if it's the right decision to make, like to buy that piece of property? I'm like, oh, thank you for asking that question. So I got to talk with him about that, but it's that kind of a question where, how do I know if this is the right decision? You got to run through this activity. Again, if you can do it, if you're a small business, like John was saying, with just, yourself and 2, 3, 4 employees, just run through this with them. It doesn't have to be an executive team. They know your business just as well as you do, probably. Maybe not just as well, but they know it. Ask them this question: what's true about us? Write it up there. Find those 3 groupings. One more added layer of nuance I will say, kind of backing up a little bit, is most of these questions won't change. Um, but questions 1, 2, they shouldn't change. Why do we exist and how do we behave? Those questions should never change. They should always be the same. Why you started your company and how you behave should be consistent forever. Question 3, which I'm just realizing now that I think I skipped somehow. I apologize. We'll go back to that. Question 3 is what do we do, can change from time to time. Question 4 can change to time as well. How we succeed can change as the marketplace shifts. For me, an important piece right now is that I have to keep my overhead low, but that might change in the future. If I decide that I want to, because I'm a solopreneur, right? I'm working by myself. I am the company. If I decide that I want to hire people or I want to get an office space or things like that, that can change my strategy. That can change how I'm shifting. But for now, I say, hey, should I do this? Well, it costs $10,000. That's a no. It's just a filter for me to run my decisions through. Is it going to increase my overhead? Another one of my strategic anchors is customer intimacy. That's something that's really important to me. So if I say, hey, should I do this? Well, is it going to be detracting from my customer intimacy? If the answer is yes, well, that's a no for me. That's just, I can say, oh, cool, I don't have to worry about it. So I hope this is easy for you guys to see. So for question 3, we're going to jump back to that really quick, which I apologize that we skipped it. Question 3 is very simple. What do we do? It should be clear but short. So if you run a printing agency, one of the companies that I was talking to runs a printing agency. They might be, we make printing paraphernalia. That might be booklets, pamphlets, magnets, whatever. Printing paraphernalia for all of Southwest Wisconsin. That could be it. Or it might be, we provide consulting and coaching services to small to medium-sized businesses in the United States. That's what I do. What do I do? Just very clear. Again, you might think, okay, well, that seems like an obvious question, but if you ask it, you might be surprised by how vague the answer is, because it should be specific. It should be short but specific. Okay. Sorry for that sidetrack there. I apologize. We're going to jump back in here into where we are with the slides with creating clarity. When you're talking about these 3, there's a great book, which I highly recommend, called The Discipline of Market Leaders by Tracy and Wiasima, I think. Tracy and Wiasima. I think that's right. The Discipline of Market Leaders. They say, and I've adapted this for us, but they say that there's 3 disciplines of market leaders. There's product leadership, there's operational excellence, and there's customer intimacy. It's very easy to say, yes, we want to be those, but you can't be all 3 of those. It's impossible. If you do, you're going to fail in all of them. If we look back here, low fares is actually the discipline of market leaders for Southwest Airlines, which is operational excellence. They are an operationally excellent company. Now you'll see they have customer experience as one of their strategic anchors, because they know that just by the factor of them being an operational excellence company, their customer experience will suffer. That's just what happens, right? For me, mine, as you probably would have been able to guess, my discipline is customer intimacy. That's the one that I want to be, and I'm choosing to be best at. It also means that I'm never going to have the best stuff, right? I'm not going to be into product leadership, and I'm never going to be the most efficient. So make some really tactical and hopefully easy to see examples would be Apple. Apple computing or computers or whatever they're called these days, maybe it's just Apple, is an example of product leadership. They've got the best stuff out there. But now, and especially in their early days, their customer service was pretty shocking, and they're expensive. They're not that operationally excellent. McDonald's would be a great example of operational excellence, right? You can get the same burger at any McDonald's, but you can also get a better burger at anywhere except McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like, so operational excellence doesn't mean great. It just means always the same. Like you're going to get the same stuff. It's going to be standard. Your local coffee shop, I would guess, would be an example of customer intimacy. So these are some examples to kind of help you see what it's through. And none is better than the other, right? They're just different. It's important to know which one you are, though, and which way you need to lean. If you are in operational excellence or product leadership, you're going to have to actively lead into customer intimacy, knowing that that's going to suffer just a result of you choosing one of those two. So that's really important to understand. So again, jumping back, we see that low fares is this one, and even on time, right? Like both of those can be operational excellence. So to kind of emphasize this point, I want to ask you another question. Okay, now that we've run through this whole process with Southwest Airlines, what is true about United Airlines? Right? There's nothing. When I think of it, like the first thing I can think of was maybe frequent flyer miles. I don't know. But the point is that when a company does, like maybe you're thinking, oh, they drag people off planes. If a company doesn't have a strategy, it's very clear they don't have a strategy. Because United, what is United known for? It doesn't distinguish itself from its competitors at all. When I think of United, American, I don't even know the others. Like I can't remember their names. That's how much of an impact they haven't made. I don't know what separates them. But you tell me Southwest, I know exactly what distinguishes them, what differentiates them from the competition. Which is a key aspect of this is I don't want you to be commoditized. You don't want to be commoditized. It's bad for you. It's bad for your customer. You end up in a price war. By running through these 6 questions, you will be able to differentiate yourself, and you won't be a commodity. You won't be fighting on price anymore. You'll be fighting on who you are as a company, what you stand for, what you're going to give them. It's good. It's good for everyone. The customer will enjoy you, right? Southwest customers are extremely loyal because they love Southwest. Having said that, most business people don't like to fly on Southwest because they like to be comfortable. They like to be able to sit back and do their work. Southwest is 100% okay with that because they know who their customer is. And I think that's where, you always hear about who's your ideal customer? Who's your ideal customer? That's a question that keeps coming up. This process helps you understand that, helps you know who is your ideal customer and be okay with letting the other ones go. Just like Southwest is okay with letting those business people who want first class, they want to be able to put their feet up and take a nap if they want to. We have to be okay with knowing those things and being okay letting it go. Okay, question number 5. Excuse me as I get some water. Question 5 is, what's most important right now? I often hear, okay, but I've got 2 most important things. Well, first of all, you can't have 2 most important things. Most means 1. Second of all, once you go through this exercise, I think that you'll find that usually one of them will fit underneath the other, or that you just won't have enough time and energy to do both of them. And that's part of the thing here, is that we only have enough time and energy to really focus intently on one most important thing. So the first step with that is we have to run through a quick list of things that we need to do, right? It should only be one thing. It should be shared across your team, whether that's your leadership team, if you have one, or if you're a small team, it should be shared across your team. It doesn't matter if Someone's in customer service, someone's in production, someone's in manufacturing, someone's in IT. This should be shared across your team. It should be qualitative, not quantitative. It should be time bound, and it shouldn't be too tactical. We don't want it to be too tactical.
Real quick, Zach, can you touch
Yeah.
on, in your mind, a little bit of the difference between tactics and strategy? Because I think that's one common mistake that small business owners make. They focus all
Yeah.
on the strategy. In reality, it's a tactic, not a strategy.
Yeah. So a tactic is how we execute our strategy. So a tactic for Southwest was not charging bag fees. That was a tactic. Their strategy was having low prices. This, so for them, how they went about their strategy is their tactics. Is that clear?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to know because the thing about the tactics is that it's the day-to-day stuff, right? It can really suck you in. Um, there's a book I think called The Four Disciplines of Execution. I think it's in that book. They call it a whirlwind because it just sucks you in. That day-to-day just sucks you in, and I love that term. Because it really is, the day-to-day stuff will suck you in like a whirlwind unless you're specifically and deliberately focusing on something else, which is where we get this next question from, question 5. What's most important right now? So we're going to run through another exercise again because I really want to make it tangible to you and hope that you can see it in a really clear way. So way back in the early 2000s, Firestone was facing a crisis because their tires were blowing up. John, do you remember this?
Vaguely, only
Okay.
vaguely.
No, it's fine. So the company essentially was going. They were going to go under. So what they had to do was they had to think, okay, what is one thing that we can rally around, which we call it a rallying cry or a thematic goal, as you'll see here. What's this one thing? Now, most people would think, okay, fix the tires. That has to be it, right? But if you think about it, we want to find something that everyone in the team can rally around that we can complete in the next 3 to 12 months. If it's shorter than 3 months, it's way too quick. It's not enough time to really focus around it well. If it's longer than 12 months, people are going to keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. It's not going to be urgent. So really 3 to 12 months. Most of my clients pick somewhere in the 6, 7, 8, maybe 9-month range is usually where people end up falling because that seems like a good time frame for stuff to do. And as we know, work expands to fill the time allotted to it, right? So 8 months, usually we end up around there. So with this thematic goal, fix the tires, that can seem obvious at first, but if that's all we did, if that's all Firestone did in the 8 months following this, would they really be successful? No, probably not. So what they really have to do and what they ended up doing is surviving by reestablishing credibility. So that ended up being their rallying cry, their thematic goal, which I know I wrote thematic goal on the PowerPoint over here, but I really love the idea of a rallying cry because it's something we can rally around, something the team can come together around. So how do we survive by reestablishing credibility? What's the first thing that we have to do? Okay, well, obviously, it's fix the tires. Okay, there's the first thing we have to do, which fits under this idea of defining objectives. You should have 4, 5, 6 defining objectives, maybe 7, really more than 7, and it starts to be too many. You can probably merge some of those. The first defining objective, what do we have to do to, remember, with these defining objectives, we're answering the question, what do we have to do to reestablish credibility? Fix the tires. Great. Awesome. We fixed the tires. Okay. Well, now what do we? We have to improve PR. We have to go out and tell our customers that, hey, our tires aren't going to be blowing people up anymore. We're not going to be killing people. I think something like 300 people with hundreds and hundreds more died, hundreds and hundreds more injured. Sorry. So about 300 people died from these tires blowing up and hundreds more get injured. So that's a lot of PR that you have to fix, right? The third one is distributor relations, because Firestone, generally speaking, sold to Ford, they sold to GM, whoever, and Ford or GM or whoever put their tires on their cars. In this case, Ford was understandably kind of upset because Ford was suffering as a result. So you've got to mend distributor relations. The third one is you have to manage employee morale, because your our tires are killing people. That is a huge morale killer. So you got to increase employee morale. And the last one that we have to do is manage and settle lawsuits. Understandably, there's a lot of lawsuits. And if we don't get out from under the heap of lawsuits, we're going to be buried, absolutely buried by them. So now we look at these 5 things. If we do these 5 things, we being Firestone again, if we do these 5 things in the next 8, 9 months, will we be successful? If that's all we do. Well, at first you might think, well, yeah, I think so. That seems like a pretty good way to survive by reestablishing credibility. But in actuality, if that's all we're doing, we're not going to be successful because there's the day-to-day stuff, the whirlwind, as I talked about before, that has to happen. So this is separate from that. And really, so this is on your playbook, by the way. It should be on your playbook. I think I put 7 or 6 squares out, so you can put 6 squares in there too. We have to get what we call our standard operating procedures. And these are going to be things like production, research, customer satisfaction, marketing, revenue, expenses. This is everyday stuff that has to keep happening no matter what. This stuff has to happen. If we're not doing this stuff, even if we do everything under our rallying cry, even if we do all of this, we're not going to be successful unless we're also doing our standard operating objectives. And this changes from company to company. This will be different all the time. Some companies might have 4 or 5. Some companies I've heard of that have had 12. Some of my colleagues told me they had 12 standard operating procedures. So it really depends. There's no right or wrong answer with these. Whatever the stuff is that you have to do every day to be successful.
The point is that you have a process in place to follow day in and day out.
Exactly. Yeah, and I want to say, so now that we've got this, I'm going to jump into this next slide. It's got some colors on it. This, for me, is how I tell my clients they should run their weekly staff meeting, which is a tactical meeting, right? If you want to have a strategic meeting, great, but keep it separate from your weekly tactical meeting. Alan Mulally, who was the CEO of Ford that turned Ford around in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, whenever it was, maybe it was even late 2000s, actually, sorry. He did it with red, yellow, and green. He would go to, if you've ever read American Icon, great book. If you care about it, I loved it. He turned Ford around with red, yellow, and green. He would ask all of his executives, all right, how are we doing? Red, yellow, or green? And the idea is that you go into your weekly tactical meeting and you say, okay, how are we doing on fixing the tires? Is it red, yellow, or green? And they'll say, you like go around in a circle, ask your employees, and you set your agenda real time by asking these questions. You don't have a preset agenda because if you say, hey, we need to talk about fixing the tires, but the tires, if everyone says it's green, which it is in this slide, why are you talking about the tires if the tires are green? You've got to talk about improving PR, which is red. And you won't know that until you get there and talk to your team about it that week. So if you start changing the way that you run your meeting to reflect whatever your rallying cry is, to say, okay, what's most important? That's not to say you shouldn't talk about fixing the tires, but if it's green, talk about the red thing. Figure out why is it red? What's going on? How can we make that green? And then just go through the list. Go, okay, so fixed tires is green, improved PR is red, distributor relations is yellow, employee morale and settle lawsuits are orange. If you can't decide between red or yellow, make it orange. That's totally fine. It can be orange. The idea is to have clear understanding of what is most, like, what should we be talking about in our meeting, instead of having a meeting that in which you're talking about the company picnic, or how we're going to give raises for people. That stuff is fine. It's good to know why and how you give raises, but you shouldn't be talking about that in your weekly tactical. You should be having an offsite talking about how and why we're going to give raises. Go and take your team away for 2 days, talk about all that kind of stuff. For your company picnic, let the HR guy, let whoever else do that. That you don't have need to have a meeting about that. That's a waste of everyone's time. And we care about your time because your time is valuable. Okay, and then you do the same thing again with your standard operating procedures. How are we doing in these ways? Talk about the ones that are red, ignore the ones that are green. Well, you don't have to ignore them, but just a
Move
quick
on,
touch
so
on
to
it.
speak, because they're
Exactly.
good, obviously.
Yep, exactly. They're good. Okay, that's the end of the 5th question. So those 2 questions, especially number 4 and number 5, I really hope are especially practical to you guys. I love them. I use them myself, as you saw with my playbook here. I've got mine right here. That's my thematic goal, my rallying cry. I check that every day. How am I doing on those things? I really think even if you ignore questions 1, 2, and 3, and 6, which we're about to do. If you know questions 4 and 5, that can really help you move forward with your business in progress. Did you have a question, John?
Well, a little bit of an overarching question. Yeah. This is super, super cool, but it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
If we're to condense this down for the small business owner who's been watching this or watches the recording and they go, okay, this is absolutely fascinating, but I'm like a little bit of, paralysis by analysis, so to speak.
Yeah.
What does the small business owner need to do to start implementing this like today? What are like 3 things they need to be doing to implement it?
Yeah. So with the small business owner, if it's just, often if you're working with a founder, a lot of this stuff you kind of, or like, um, the founders already know the why. So that's usually an easy thing. It's the whole goal of these 6 questions is to use as a filter through which to run your decisions. Um, I hope I'm answering your question here well, but really, even if you start at the top, okay, why do we exist? If that paving company, for instance, that I mentioned earlier, if they exist to give low income or people who couldn't get a job otherwise, if they exist to give them jobs, then suddenly deciding to require college educations seems like a pretty silly decision for their why. So really, even at the very top, the reason and how you apply this is the decisions you want to make, start running it through, like ask yourself, okay, does it match up to why? Okay, well, will it match our behaviors? Okay, well, does it match what we do? For instance, if I had a client call me up and say, hey, we want you to fly over here to Thailand, run a 2-day offsite, you know, that for me, that's going to be a no, because I know what I do is I work with companies in the United States. I don't want to, for the sake of my family, I don't want to go out of the United States. I don't want to have international travel. Maybe one day, right? Because remember that what we do can change, but
Hmm.
for right now. So even though it is drinking by a fire hose, I think if you look at it from that perspective of, okay, all it is simply 6 filters through which to say, am I making the right decision? Because remember, at the very beginning, I said, I want to help you understand how the decisions you're making are going to be good or going to be bad. That's the purpose. That's what I'm trying to get at here, is to help you know. Because if you don't know if you've made a good decision, it can be really discouraging and you can go home miserable at the end of the day. And that sucks. No one wants to go home miserable. So knowing why and being able to make these good decisions. Is that helpful, John? Does that answer your question?
That is, the good news is there's only one thing to do. The bad news is you got to go answer 6 questions, so to speak, and you need to answer them
Exactly.
honestly.
Yep.
And you got to know your. And it all starts with knowing your purpose. And why does your business entity, or why will it exist? And everything
Yep.
kind of flows from that. No, that does make sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's as you say, it's simple, right? But it's difficult. I said that at the start too. It's difficult. It's not easy. Simple, but not easy. I'm a huge fan of simplicity, which I know already said. Huge fan of simplicity. So yeah, outside of that, I think really it's even how we succeed. I had a really cool tangible moment with one of my clients. I just started working with them. Excuse me again. Um, and they were trying to figure out who um, should do this one job, or if they should do this one job. Sorry. They were trying to figure out, as a thing, should we do this? Should we not? I'm not sure. And then we went through question 4, how we succeed. And they realized that in that moment, anything they did had to have a low time commitment, because they didn't have enough people and they didn't have enough time to be able to take on
Right.
really big projects. And for them, they're like, this thing that we're talking about doing is going to require a huge amount of time. And now we know that we just don't have the time to do it. It has to be a low time commitment. And for them, it's like, well, great. Now we know what the answer is. We're just not going to do it. So it's those kinds of things where you think about it. It's like, this just seems so esoteric. How am I supposed to apply this to myself? Well, thinking it, that's why I tried to provide you Southwest, right?
Yes.
I tried to give that example so you could see tangibly what it looks like, with, should we charge bag fees? Should we put TVs in the seats? Those 2 things that Southwest used as a filter to say, is this the right decision or not?
Absolutely. And I think this is again another important thing to note. Small business owner can outsource, payroll, they can outsource bookkeeping, they can outsource a lot.
Yep.
But when it comes to doing things internally, you can hire a consultant to help. But that small business owner needs to identify the why and kind of run through these 6 things they need to do that, because the buck stops with them. That's one of the duties, so to speak, of
Yep.
being the small business owner.
Yep.
And that's where
Absolutely.
that consultant like you would come in and help go through that process, especially for more complex situations.
Yeah.
But ultimately, beginning this process, that's not something the small business owner can outsource. They have to start it and then bring in
Yeah.
Because again, if they don't have the why, they don't have the vision. It does all the other questions, all the follow up items are mute. They don't matter without the strong vision.
Yeah. Exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly. And they really build on each other too. They really
Oh
do build
yes.
on each other. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see how they flow through and help create again a strong organization, a strong
Yep.
culture, a strategy that matches the organization, then identifying if the tactics support the strategy.
Yep.
Zach, I want to thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. As always, the content is applicable. It's fascinating. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share that with us.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing,
Of course.
really quick? Sorry, I just wanted to share that if this sounds interesting to you, which I hope it does, I hope it's been applicable. I hope it's been great. I'm going to be holding 2 6-week long workshops. One starting on May 31st, one starting on June 1st. We're going to dive into both of the first 2 disciplines, how to create cohesive teams, and then again, more detail. I really hope that you all have gotten a lot of value from this. If you want more, go visit my website. I've also given you guys a code, TMC Webinar 21. If you sign up before close of business on next Monday, the 10th, then I'm going to give almost $1,000 of bonuses. I'm going to send you guys a bunch of books, an extra hour-long session after the workshop. And I'm also going to, I'll go to one of your team meetings virtually or in person. We can figure that out. And that's almost $1,000 of value. Again, I really want to give you guys a lot of value for being here. I appreciate it. And I love small businesses. There's a link right there, zwilcoxconsulting.com/workshop-registration, and use that code TMC Webinar 21.
And Zach, if someone needs to get a hold of you to follow up on that, what's a good email to reach you?
Yeah, so Zach, ZAC, at zwilcoxconsulting.com. Or my phone number is 559-387-6436. You can call me or send me a text.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure to definitely put that summary out as well. Because again, it's all applicable for the small business owner.
Yep.
Zach, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, the value there. Upcoming workshops, I'm sure they're going to be fascinating, as was today.
Good. Glad to hear it. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to see how people are going to apply this and hopefully be the better for it.
Absolutely. You stay safe, stay blessed, and we'll be in touch.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.